So I am from a place called King Williamstown in the Eastern Cape. I don't know if any of you have ever been there.
I'm from there, so.
Oh, really? From Ekong or close by?
From Ekon, Louisburg, so yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So I was born in Zweli, which, as you know, is a township just outside of King Williamstown. I then grew up for most of my life in King Williamstown. For a short stint, my parents lived in Cape Town, but otherwise that was only a few years. And they moved back to King Williamstown. So that's actually where I grew up. And I often joke that the best thing that happened to me in King Williamstown was getting out of King Williamstown. Because it's a small town, there's not much, to be honest. It's very rich in history. It's grown a lot of political leaders, even within South Africa. But actually, there's not that much from a career perspective unless you go into the public service. So at the time when I was now nearing matric, I'm going to talk to you guys, by the way, when I talk about my story for the first 10 minutes, about mainly a few milestones or a few key turning points that determined my path to get to where I am now. So I was in grade 11 at the time, and I was in geography class. And I got a map work assignment back where I was sitting next to my friend Kim, and we compared our different map work assignments. Mine was rated, I think, about 75. That was the score. Hers was in the 90s. And when we looked at our respective assignments, hers was actually poorer than mine. So as my friend, we like, why is this the case if mine was actually better? And it was actually the first time that the penny dropped around subconscious or unconscious bias. And the fact that people will rate you depending on how you're packaged and already start marking you down because of that. Because there's no excuse for why those marks were so different, yet the one was so clearly better than the other. And so the first thing I did was obviously then ditch geography. This is now in term 3 in grade 11, where my mom was absolutely horrified because she was like, how can you do it? You're almost in matric, and you guys will know the curriculum starts from about grade 10, building up to the matric year. And I was like, it's fine, because my dad was a history teacher and I wasn't taking history. So I did geography, I took history, and I caught up. To the point where I then got actually, I think it was a 91% mark in matric for history. But that's how determined I was, also to show that geography teacher. But my point is that it was the first time that it became so real to me in terms of grading. And what happened is that throughout my schooling career, I'd mainly been a mediocre student in the sense that 60s, 70s, but not outstanding. That carried through even into matric. And then all of a sudden, when I wrote my matric finals, where it was the first time that I was not marked based on my name, but based on purely an examination number, that this person who had never gotten any academic honors all the way through primary and high school suddenly landed up with, and I don't know if you guys still call it these days, this thing, but an A aggregate. How come when for the first time I was marked based on a pure examination number, not based on my name or surname, all of a sudden, and it's not like I worked particularly hard in matric finals, by the way, I still went to parties because my friends all finished before me, because that bloody history paper was the last paper as well. So they were all already partying and getting ready to go on holiday. So I was actually, it's not like the effort was any different. It tells you a lot about what the world is going to perceive or accept you as. And actually, the only decision I decided at that particular point in time was that I was going to lean in anyway. Because I am Black. And then when I entered the corporate world, I'm female. I'm younger. Do you know what I mean? And so there's always going to be something that's holding you back from your lens. For some people, it's religion. For some people, if they're Islamic and they show up with a burqa, people automatically make different assumptions about what their values are or how good they can be at their job. For some people, it's are you gay or lesbian? My point is, whether it's a disability, religious or whatever, or race or age, you're probably not going to be able to change the way you're wired. The world is going to have a subconscious or unconscious bias towards you. You may as well lean in anyway. It's not going to give you the permission to. So that was turning point number one. Turning point number two was then I finally got out of King Williamstown. I then went to UCT. Any UCT people in the audience? No, not for that. Well, for money. And I studied business science at UCT. And actually, how did I choose that? All I did, to be honest, was look at the UCT prospectus and pick the things that needed the highest marks to get into. Because to my brain, that meant that that was going to give me a good career. And initially, by the way, I hadn't done that because remember, I'd now applied based on grade 11 and half-year grade 12 marks, which was still in that B or C range. What happened is that after I got my matric certificate in that first week of January, I then went back to UCT and I upgraded my expectation or ask because I realized that I was worthy of more. So do you see how if you actually allow what the world tells you who you are, it also starts to diminish what you think you can do? So I changed my application only at or about, I don't know, the 10th of Jan, and then was admitted into the business science degree because I also backed myself a little bit more. And that was the journey that eventually led to me being in finance, and I'm now in banking. The third turning point was who you marry or who you date. Now, this is for the ladies in particular, because especially in your 20s, it is the time actually to build a career track record, to put your runs on the board, using a cricket analogy. And yet it's also the time when you're probably going to fall in love and want to have children, which is absolutely fine. But who your partner is or your support structure is at home, whatever way it may look like, doesn't have to be that you have children or not, matters. Because who's helping you look after some of the home fires in order to let you rise and be the career woman that you want to be is very important. And if your partner is somebody who is going to count the minutes because you said that you were going to be home at 6, and even though that person is able-bodied, they don't get up and start going to prepare the dinner because you're not home by 6:15 because you said you were going to be home by 6. Let me tell you, ladies, that's not the person you should be with. You need people in your life who are going to be supportive. So your circle matters, starting with your circle in your home, then your broader circle and support structure. The next turning point for me actually was motherhood. So my husband, he's late now, he had a child from his previous relationship. And when that child was about 5 years old, he came to live with us. And I must be honest with you, I had some very harsh expectations of the world. And there's nothing to humble you like motherhood when somebody's at a party and you can tell, okay, he's had too many sweets. And then they just walk up to you and just looking at their face, you can, no, you're going to vomit. So you like, put your hand out because you're like, yes, okay. So my point is nothing's going to humble you and ground you, actually, like family. And so I encourage you that even for those who don't actually have children, try and have a life outside of your career, outside of your work, outside of your business. You do need perspective from other things that also grounds you. So those were some of the really big turning points in my life post King Williamstown. Are we going to do questions in between or should I actually after? Are you sure? Because I feel like we might forget some of these questions. I'll get through the content, I promise, if I see the questions are getting too much. Any questions on this first part?
I'm just curious, so you became a stepmom before you were a mom yourself?
Yes.
And how do you juggle that? Because I find it being young parents, probably I'm not sure if you're going to
Sure. No, I wasn't, but fine, I'm happy to. No, but I'm happy to. So the biggest thing I had to grapple with being a step parent was that, you know, when you want to be liked by this child and you feel like, you know, oh, how are we going to do this? Because can I be me? And actually I decided that if I was going to be anything but me, I was actually holding something back from him. And so actually I didn't then worry that I was different from his biological mom. And therefore, because I'm a little bit more rules-based, you must eat your peas, you must go to bed at 8:30, whereas she was a lot more fluid, if you understand me. I understood that even though it required me to actually just be me and parent the best way that I could, that that was the best thing to do for the situation, rather than walk on eggshells, because then actually I'm holding something back from you. And then actually I'm being inauthentic in that way. There's a hand at the back.
Right. You spoke about your parents' profession and now talking about being mindful of your circle. I just need to understand the background, your upbringing. How was that? How did that influence your career choices?
Sure.
You as you are.
So my dad was a school teacher, as I said. So he taught history and eventually was a school principal. My mom was a civil servant, so mostly an administration part of government. So I didn't have career guidance, if that makes sense. I didn't know different engineering options. I didn't actually, until I took accounting in high school, know what chartered accountancy path was or anything like that. So the one thing, though, that my parents did do was try to send me to the very best schools that they could afford at any given point in time. And to give me, I heard earlier the talk about how exposure helps you. I had the opportunity, my parents paid for me to go and be an exchange student in Germany for 3 months when I was in grade 11. That helps a lot because it opens up your worldview. And so I think that the biggest thing, I suppose, that my parents and my upbringing gave me was the importance of education and exposure. And that was enough, because then I could, go and navigate the rest. Okay, this is the last hand on this, on me. And then we'll talk about that on the business topic. Go.
So I think for me, it's when you said that your partner or your support within home is the biggest thing. So have you had a situation where you had to walk away from relationships that you knew were not going to get you?
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, we need a whole hour for that. No, I'm joking. But actually, I'm gonna do it in 2 minutes. So actually, I was once engaged to such a person. And the lobola had been paid, and then like 2 months before we were supposed to start progressing things, I was actually like, this is not the person for me, because he needed a different type of partner, not me. I hope that makes sense. So this is not a blame game, by the way. It's not a bash the ex thing. And so I consciously walked away from that. And now at the point where I have to call my mom and I'm like, okay, so I've decided that I don't want to go through with this. And now actually I think it's the right thing to do for us to repay the lobola. And my mom is like, those new kitchen windows. And she'd already used the money and redone her kitchen, that woman. Anyway, and so I had to somehow find some cash somewhere because I had to fund my own lobola refund. But my point is, I was willing to go that far to separate from something that I could see long term wasn't going to be the best outcome for either of us, actually. So yes, and it cost me money to walk away from such a thing. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to the business topic. We can come back to this if we have time later, if they let us. Okay, so the topic is building a sustainable business. So what we're actually going to be doing for the next 30 minutes or so is making sure that you never have this, that you never go out of business if indeed you're looking to build a business or if you're going to stay within corporate and actually grow with them. And the first thing, actually, I'm going to say controversially, even though people are budding entrepreneurs, please don't bash the opportunity that your first job gives you. Because I find for a lot of young people, they tend to itch to go and start a business. I'm an entrepreneur, da, da, da. And actually, if you've done a first job before, you have a sense of everything about being an employee, which will make you a better employer one day. Just understanding that when you join, how do you get onboarded? Do you get an onboarding pack? Does somebody explain your pay slip? Is IT already ready to set up your laptop or not? Do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody who's teaching you? These are all things that you take for granted when you actually enter your first job. But in micro ways, they tell you how you need to be actually thinking about bringing other people into your business one day too. Also, and I wish this not on anybody ever, but you have to have had a bad manager in your life to know how to not be one. To understand how toxic it is when somebody is actually not a good leader. so that you, having now had your own breakdown and cried in your wine glass about it, know that you will never on your watch let those things happen to other people. And this applies whether or not you stay in a corporate and you climb a ladder or you start your own business. The other thing that having a first job teaches you is all the things that actually you can see how now a bigger company has set itself up. And I promise you, they all have similar traits. All of them have a head of tech or a chief, like sort of technology officer. All of them have a marketing or sales function. All companies have HR. All companies, you know what I mean? And until you've actually spent time in a first job and you've gotten to understand the need for deep specialization, you'll take for granted that when you go start your own business, that it's going to be sustainable, that you're going to be the chief marketing sales officer and the one hiring everybody and trying to run the payroll and the one trying to do your own financials do you understand the point? And I know that when you start, of course, you have to wear all those hats, of course. But you'll only appreciate why certain things are important once you start scaling your business and building that sustainable business, if you have actually had at least a front row seat into a bigger business. I hope I'm making sense. Because I know a lot of people get so impatient with being employed, as if that's a mark on a black mark on your experience. It's not, guys. Gain it where you can, because it's not just about the actual work experience. It's also about the small things that teach you one day how you want to run your own flavor. Then when you are ready to start this business or do this new thing, you're going to be brave enough to suck at something new. Why do I say that? I say that because especially once you've done that first job, you become so addicted to that monthly salary, and it becomes quite a risk actually to even think about starting something else. So guess what? You can have both, at least in the beginning. You probably actually do need that first job to fund your first business anyway, or at least the first stages of it. But also you're going to need to be brave enough to actually go and try new things in order to pursue a bigger dream than just being in that first job. And you can still do it while you still hold down a job, by the way. You don't need to completely separate. Most companies do allow you to have a side hustle. And in fact, a lot of people these days are turning to having a side hustle, whether it's baking cakes on the weekend or doing children's parties or doing some graphic design on the side. Because frankly, also from an economic perspective, it's not like with inflation going up at, 6% this year, that your salary is going up by 6% per year. And yet your school fees are going up 6 or 10% per year in some instances. So there's going to need to be some bravery. You heard Prof earlier talking about the need for leaders who are brave, but also who are optimistic. It is tough. You're going to have to be brave. I want to share this one because it holds very close to me. If you can't tolerate critics, don't do anything new or interesting. If you're going to walk a journey, I did say I was going to send the presentation, so clearly you were late. You didn't hear my rules. Be present. I can send this to you. Yeah, let's talk. This is very important, either for whether or not you're going to stay in your career or in life. And that's why actually people say the older you get, the smaller your circle becomes. Because actually you start to go, to be honest, firstly, you have to have a bit of tough skin, because you're not going to be able to listen to every single opinion or take everything on board. You're going to need to back yourself in a lot of instances. And especially as the business leader, there are people who are going to be telling you that this is not going to work. Now, I'm not saying you must go pursue your dream and then eventually go be homeless because you pursued it even when you could see that it wasn't working out. Of course, this is within reason. But you gotta get tougher about backing your own ideas and deciding that when you're gonna go for something, you're not gonna stop and answer everybody. Unfortunately, you're gonna come under a lot of attack. Some people are gonna be like, they're gonna misinterpret something you said in a meeting, or they're gonna misinterpret an advert that you put out. And I think it's responsible, yes, to respond to some of that stuff, but you're not going to get there if you actually stop to throw a stone at everything. Focus. Then when you're ready to start that business, you're going to actually have to decide what's your business purpose. Now, this is one where after we talk about this particular slide, I'm actually going to pause for questions and input for those of you who have actually journeyed to start your business. If you can't define on one line what you actually are doing in your business every single day and why you're doing it, then actually I think you're not going to be able to motivate any of your staff to be able to follow the dream. It's going to be tougher to attract the people who you want to buy from you. You need to decide what is your purpose. What seed are you planting for growing what plant in the future? What need are you meeting? What service are you providing and why? And why are you going to be better at it than the next person? Or cheaper or faster? Because you don't always have to be better, by the way. It could also just be a function of speed. How many of you use grocery delivery apps on your phone to order groceries? Great. And you know that sometimes it's not about going to compare this one from that one to see, oh, the bread there is 21 Rand 99 and this one is 22 Rand 99. Sometimes it's just about, let's get going, and the convenience and the fact that you need the bread now because you're hungry now. And you don't care that one is going to say, actually, I'm 1 Rand cheaper. So purpose and what you do and why you do it and what sets you apart isn't always just about who's better, who has less price, etc., etc. But you do need to have a business purpose that you've defined and be able to tell people about it in one sentence or a headline. I'm going to pause here for any questions on the last couple of slides, because I don't want them to lose the train of thought by the end.
Backing your own ideas is
Yeah.
important, and you mentioned that. So how do you balance out backing your own ideas with when you have like someone who's either more senior than you in corporate or like someone who's an expert in the industry for your own business? So like, let's say the person comes back with feedback and says, I don't really think that's a great idea. How do you balance, okay, I want to back this up, but I also want to be open to listening and learning from others who have got greater experience?
Sure. So I don't think I have a direct answer, but I'm going to answer you in a different way. So I think that it's very hard to ignore you if you actually work hard and are really good at your job, because then it's like you almost crowd out the people who don't want to listen to you, and you make yourself heard simply by the virtue of the fact that you work really hard, you deliver, and so you can't be brushed under the carpet. There's always going to be a dynamic where you're kind of having to force yourself in just in some instances, or own the mic or unmute, whatever the terminology is these days. But I find that the license to give you that agency and voice is how good you are. Which is why actually, and this ties in also, unfortunately, with that earlier unconscious bias comment that I made earlier. Because if you are younger, if you are of a different religion, race, gender, etc., in an organization, let's say, that is mainly male dominated, etc., it can possibly feel even harder to say that or to echo your voice. And I think the one thing that people can't deny you is if you're really, really, really good, which means that whether or not it puts extra pressure on you, I think, guys, you can't ignore that either. And that's a function of life. I remember somebody once asking me that as such a young female Black leader, don't I feel a lot of pressure that so many people in the various organizations that I've had the privilege to work for are going, she's a role model. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, what a privilege that I'm the one that gets to hold that baton. Because if we don't do it, who do we think is going to do it? Where are the other Black females who are young, who are occupying spaces in boardrooms? You know, like it's here, it's you, it's me, it's whoever. You know what I mean? And so the one thing I said to her is, unfortunately, it means that I never allow myself to have a bad day. And if I do, I bounce back very quickly. As a result, I over-prepare for every single meeting. I'll even practice sometimes if I've got a really big thing that I need to prepare for. Because if you need to set the benchmark that makes sure that you're not ignored, you do work harder than everybody else. And you are better than everybody else. And you know your stuff better than everybody else. I hope that helps. Cool. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mugodi. Sis Andiswa, I just wanted to ask, as someone, personally, I've been in entrepreneurship for over 2 years now. I run like an educational consulting company. I found that I failed, so I do have experience. I've listened to a lot of people in the past, and like I think it was Prof. Chilizi was saying that your energy is finite, it's not infinite. So it does exhaust at the end of the day. So I've had a lot of people telling me that you don't know where you're going. You're stupid. This and this and this. And I allowed that to get to me. And I paused for a year. But then now, my passion is people, says Andiswa. Even with those people who tell me that you can't do it, I still go back to them and say, I can do it and we can do it together. But I've also learned that, some people are just not built at the height that you're going. But because I'm so passionate about people, I want to bring everyone along with me. And I find that still holds me back. Cause it's my calling. So how do I get over that barrier that I currently face?
Okay, so I'm going to answer from a personal perspective. I'm naturally inclined to working with others. I'm naturally inclined to group thinking in the sense that even when I think of what success looks like for myself, I don't see myself only standing there, I don't. It's just not in my DNA from how I'm wired. By the way, there's nothing wrong with those people either. That's just not me. So I have a natural inclination to carry others along. And it's been particularly hard when you have to leave some of them behind because they show you that they either are not as invested in you. And because I find that even if somebody is differently able to do a task or whatever, actually the thing that counts the most is the effort they put in. I any day pick a person who works hard and has the basic requirements and wants to do well and is checked in, engaged, versus somebody who's very smart but very lazy. And so I think that where I've had to, let's call it, leave people behind, actually it's not even the people who aren't the smartest, you know what I mean? It's actually the people that were lazy. Pick them well. The ones who put in the greatest effort are going to walk the road with you. Oh, there's more questions then on that. Yes. Okay, so let's take that hand, and one here. And then I'm going to move on because I'm conscious. There's 2 more slides, by the way. It's not that long.
Hi, this is Andiswa. My name is Desmond Jr. And my question may or may not be related to the previous slide. But there's an article where you spoke about, and you said something like, go where you are wanted, as those are the workplaces that will give you the best exposure and career growth. So my question is, what advice would you have for someone who knows very well that they're in a space where they're not wanted, but don't necessarily have the tools to move or go where they would be wanted?
Sure. So the first thing that I want to get out the way, and then I'm going to answer the question. Of course, unless you're sitting on a trust fund, you need to earn a living. So even the place where you feel that you're not wanted, sometimes, and pardon to you, such a harsh, you have to suck it up. You know what I mean? Because you do have to earn a living. You have to put bread on the table or pay your rent or pay your parents something, if you get what I mean. So I would never encourage somebody to be irresponsible and go and ditch their job because you're trying to send a message to your manager. Okay, that's just cutting off your nose to spite your face. Okay. Having said that, in those environments, actually, when you know, you will know in your heart, actually, and you will know in your gut. And no matter how many people, when you speak to them, they say, actually, I don't think it's that bad or whatever. If you're in it, you know how bad it is. And a lot of the time, toxicity in the workplace is micro behaviors. They don't come out and say to you, I really don't like your hair. Or you know what I mean? I'm just making a, sorry. That's just, you were just right there, you know? And therefore you don't belong here. Nobody's going to say that. It's going to be the fact that when I speak, I make eye contact with everybody other than her, or when we're having an opportunity to engage, I invite all of you to the drinks and not her. I hope that makes sense, or something like that. It's all the micro behaviors. It's when you're sitting and somebody says, you know who can answer that question? And instead of them answering it themselves, even though they know the answer, and they go, her. Those are the people, because they want you. They make sure that they give you the exposure. They make sure that they back you. They make sure that even if you do give a mediocre answer, I come in just behind there and I go, and another way that we could have thought about it or whatever, you know what I mean? People will smooth your mistakes over if they actually want you. And so what I would encourage is that as soon as you know in your gut that it's probably never going to work out, and it is that toxic and you're not that wanted, there's nothing wrong with leaving, because trying to overturn that is so much effort compared to actually finding a place where you're going to be wanted, celebrated, exposed, etc. So without putting your livelihood at risk, because I said, let me get that out the way first, as soon as you can, sometimes it's not worth trying to save something that's not savable. Walk away. There was a hand here.
Okay. So on the point of purpose, right, I believe that your goals should stem out of purpose. So my question is goal congruency between your personal goals as an individual and the goals of the organization a prerequisite for your success?
Okay, so I think to a large extent it has to align. Otherwise, you're always going to have certain values and the things that you want to achieve that the organization doesn't agree with. And then you'll never get the funding to help you do that, or the decision making, or the resources. So I do think there has to be a link between, at least at some level, your personal goals and wherever you work. And also, if you're running your own business, with your own personal goals and what you want your business to achieve, and what you've then shared with your employees. Otherwise, everybody's moving in different directions.
Good morning. My name is Ndombana. I wanted to ask you, what have been the hardest internal conversations you've had with yourself when you were pivoting in your career? And have all the pivots that you've had in your career been predetermined by yourself? So maybe you get into a career and you're like, okay, in my profession, I'm an economist. And so there's like a natural ladder. And then somehow something else happens that you didn't really, anticipate. How did you reconcile that with yourself?
Okay, so the best example, I suppose, of where I've had a pivot, because after varsity, I then went into consulting, and then I went into investment banking. And that's where I was for 12 years. So the pivot to more of working now with small, medium enterprises, which is what I currently do, it happened in my early 30s. I don't know if any of you guys are all under 35. How lucky. Okay. How many of you are, anyway, so who's 33? Anybody in the room, 32, 33? I think you also find around that age something about the fact that you've now been working for 10 plus years. You're a little bit established, okay? So you're fine. You have a decent home to live, probably. You have a car. You can probably afford school fees if you have children. You know what I mean? Got medical aid. You're fine. You're an adult now. You're adulting. There's something about that phase where eventually you go, but what more? I don't know, like you have a little bit of a crisis. I had a quarter life crisis at that stage, where I was like, what am I going to be doing that's more than what I'm doing right now? And actually it was things that came in different places that helped me find the clarity to move to the next step. I didn't manifest this current move. I didn't know this is where I was going to land up. But I had enough conversations with enough people that were within my different circles that people said, what about this? What about that? Let me introduce you to that person. And in having various conversations, it helped to put almost the mirrors outside that helped me to also reflect. And that's how the moves came about. Cool. I did say that was the last question for now.
I just have one more.
Coordinator, you have a question.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
You were speaking about the why for your purpose. My first one is, how hard is it to define in the world what that need should be when you're looking at it from the bank's point of view? How clear does that need have to be, and who has to say that, okay, there is a need there? And then the second one is, how often do you have to change that purpose, or should you change your purpose with how the world changes, society, environment, and stuff? How often should you review that purpose?
So I'll answer you, not that I'm wearing my FNB hat today, but I'll give you how it resonates with me. When people ask me, what do I do every day, or what's my job? I say my job is to help small businesses to grow. That doesn't then need to change depending on what the interest rate is, or who's in government, or whether there's less or more businesses that now need that help to grow, if you understand me. So your purpose can be something that clear. One line, remember I told you about the one line thing. I live it myself. I don't just say you guys must do it. But that doesn't need to change depending on what season or month or things have changed. You'll know when you know that that's the thing, and that's the thing you're going to be pursuing. And it then centers your mind, because every day you show up, whether you're sitting in a risk meeting or a marketing meeting or a meeting about pricing, you are carrying the orientation that this decision, how is it actually going to help a business to grow? I come back to that every 10 minutes of the day, because then it also keeps me focused. You know what I mean? If we hire that person, is it going to help the businesses to grow? I hope that I'm making sense. It features then in everything I do. Not everything, I mean, but you know what I mean? Like most things in a business sense, because I'm that clear about it. Cool. I want to encourage you, all budding entrepreneurs, please don't forget about the boring stuff. Because when you're all running and doing these wonderful ideas and implementing new businesses, you often forget about the need for insurance. And I think let's talk about insurance just for a second. You guys will remember in a very practical example, 3 years ago when we had the looting in Durban and other areas of businesses. And actually the businesses that took the longest, at least in my experience, to bounce back were the ones that weren't insured. Because when you now have to restock from scratch and you have to repair your own shop front window because people have smashed it and looted, the businesses that were insured were the ones that bounced back faster. Personal versus business. When you start your business, please remember to separate your personal and business finances. A lot of people tend to then go and just have one account for everything. If that's the case, how do you know that your personal income isn't subsidizing your business, and if your business actually isn't underwater? How do you know? When it comes time to asking for business funding, not personal funding, how are you going to exhibit that my business is operating, it's profitable, it's worthy of being financed, if it's still commingled with your personal finances? Have the disciplines as if you're building a sustainable business that's going to be a big business. Don't think because if you're starting, let's say, that you're a small business, these things they matter. Because remember, we're building sustainable businesses. That's the topic. Some of these things matter. Register the business, be tax compliant, protect your IP and security. There's nothing worse than being wiped out because somebody hacked your email, changed the invoice payment details that you were going to send to the people you've now supplied goods to, and the money gets paid to some other fraudulent scammer's account, not your business account. Because somebody in your business or you were loose about putting, I don't know, Andiswa123 as your Gmail password, or come on, you know what I mean? So pay attention to these little things as you start your business. They're important. Knowing your business finances. I know that for a lot of business owners, when they're starting, they think that some of these accounting principles are too hard to comprehend. Let me tell you, it will save your bacon if you know your own business better than the next person. You have to have a sense of how much is it costing me to produce this cup of coffee and deliver it. Otherwise, you're possibly undercharging. I hope I'm making sense. If you don't understand those things about your own business, in particular your cash flow, those are the things that gets business owners into trouble. Not so much did you have a cool jacket that you were trying to sell. And then there's times when you are going to mess it up and you are going to fail, or things are going to go against you, or COVID hits, who knows. Sometimes it's even completely out of your control. And all I encourage you to do at that point is don't look where you fall, but where you slipped. Because if you're going to look at the end point, this is the crash that happened, you're not going to be able to go back and see why did it happen? Why did you slip? Businesses don't fail at the point where all of a sudden they can't pay the suppliers or pay the employees. They fail because 6 months ago you weren't disciplined in managing cost, or you weren't disciplined in collecting from people who owed you, or you weren't disciplined in forecasting to say, this is what I need to set money aside for. And one of the biggest ones, actually, that's such a micro one, and it links to my previous slide, is tax compliant. I can't tell you how many small businesses run their lives going, and then all of a sudden, 28th of February, well, it's not that soon, but like once SARS closes and they know that you've got money that you haven't declared, all of a sudden they're after you and they're like, you owe us, I don't know, 100,000 Rand or whatever it is. Now your business is like, what? What is that for? Well, it's for the VAT. It's for the fact that you weren't collecting PAYE on behalf of the people that you were paying, et cetera, et cetera. I can't tell you how many businesses find themselves in a trap because of even small things like that. So it becomes important, and how you keep this checkpoint is also the people around you who you surround yourself with. If you're going to be surrounded by other entrepreneurs who are also jacked up, you'll organically share these kind of lessons with each other. See the business owners nodding here. Whereas if you hang out with people that don't want more for themselves, they're also not really running slick businesses, you're not gonna, learn from each other, if you understand what I mean. Okay, yes, there's a question.
On that point of being compliant and taking care of the boring stuff, do you think it's possible to change the culture and behavior of business owners, or should they just get help? Because I'm surrounded by so many business owners, and what they care about is the point of sale. Am I going to deliver? Am I getting money in my bank account?
Yeah.
And everything else is, not important to them.
So the way I can describe it is that, first, I don't blame them. Shame, I mean, not shame, but I'm also a business owner, failed in some instances and then came back. But my point is, so I don't speak about it as if it's an external thing, you know what I mean, that I haven't experienced myself. So I think the hardest thing to tell entrepreneurs is that they don't know enough about their own business. They're very proud, actually, as they should be. However, there is definitely value in also tapping into the resources that exist. I think that even something as simple as, how do I manage cash flow? If you put that into Google, you will come out with thousands of resources to help. So also the help doesn't require you to get in a car and go and speak to somebody, and you know what I mean? Actually, a lot of it is on your phone and people just need to look for it. So I think that it's a balance between both. Yes.
So I think my question is mainly around the discipline. How do you keep very disciplined when you're at a stage where the business is making comfortable money? You've paid your employees, and now obviously you think back to when you had started up the business. How do you discipline your financials to say, I need to stay disciplined in keeping this to the business and not taking it over to the personal side and trying to cover up?
So firstly, if you have worked that hard and you're profitable enough that you've got spare cash, please do treat yourself. So it's not to say they'll go eat all of it now, okay? And put the business into a business overdraft. But how do you keep that focus is if you have a business strategy and business plan that tells you how much you're going to need for the future. Because that money might be enough for today, and that's great. Well done if you're then profitable. But if you haven't said, actually, and now the next step is I'm going to open another store, how are you going to save for it if you haven't actually said that and put it down and understood that that's what you are saving towards? It always really, really helps to have a savings goal. But also, if you're just saving, I mean, I find there's no incentive or thing or cherry at the end. I'm less invested. Actually, you need to say what that next thing is that you want to finance with that cash, and then you will have the discipline to put it away. This is the last slide. It's only lonely at the top if you don't help anyone else get there. This is true whether you're in a corporate or you run your own business. But I'm going to talk about it mainly in the concept of running your own business. A lot of business owners do not put in place even things like succession planning. And then the business unfortunately dies with you. And then the people who are employed by that business are out of employment. And your family who you were supporting with your black tax from that business is no longer alive to help ugogo and your nephew's school fees. You know what I mean? It's important, guys. This is not just about the people that you employ and surrounding yourself with a good team and making sure that you share your pearls of wisdom with them. It's also about building the legacy for your business that will outlive you. And not outlive you only from a life or death perspective, but also from the perspective that one day what it took to start your business, which was you, may no longer be what your business needs to move to the next phase. And if you haven't actually then been humble enough to say, I need to bring in other skills, or this is now the new stage of the business that it needs to go, and you won't bring in the right skills to be able to then carry that through so you can go start something else. So this one is important, whether or not you're in a corporate or you're starting your own business. And with that, we're out of time in terms of just the slides, because I was prepping for a little bit of Q&A. And now we're going to deal the rest of your questions until we get told we're out of time. Does that work? Let's go.
I wanted to find out, you say that what you do on a daily basis is to help small businesses grow. How do you do that? Like, what is your job description on a daily basis?
Okay, so I'm the CEO of FNB Business, where we bank the business clients, everything from a startup up until they're now what we call a mid-corporate or a listed entity in which they move to a different unit of the bank. So that's what I do. That's my title, that's my job. So that's why I'm saying I sit in all variety of meeting sessions with entrepreneurs themselves, but also with internal people, with regulators, etc. And so the reason why I said that particular comment is because I could be sitting in a meeting where we are deciding what kind of transactional banking account options are we going to have available for small businesses, and how are we going to craft it and how are we going to market it. In all of those decisions, I'm actually thinking, is this actually going to help the entrepreneur? That's what I mean by this purpose statement comes in everything that I do.
I actually wanted to ask, what services does your business provide outside of like FNB?
What do you mean?
Like, what business are you in?
Oh, my own
Your
side
own
hustle.
stuff, yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you very much for that question. So I still run my late husband's business because I thought I was quite worried about the people who were employed by that. And I wanted to make sure that his family didn't go unprovided for in certain ways. I also, on the side, I don't have a book yet, by the way, but I'm planning to write one. So I consider myself a little bit of a writer as well on the side. And then, so I don't charge for it, but I do some public speaking, motivational stuff, because I feel that at some point that's part of my giving back. So I'm involved in various little things, to be honest, but nothing stand out. That's, yeah, cool.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I'm a lawyer and I deal a lot with small businesses that work with government a lot. My question to you is, what do you find a lot of small, especially Black businesses, what are the issues? I want to say that people don't get paid early enough or in time or whatever, cash flow issues, but this is like an old thinking. So I want to know now in 2024, what do you find are the main issues that small businesses have?
It's those earlier boring stuff that I put up. I find people aren't disciplined about the admin, the governance, things like that. And I'll give you a very simple example. You guys will remember through COVID that there was a various suite of relief products that were provided for businesses, either by the government or banks or by the development finance institutions. And the biggest heartbreak is when the business actually qualifies for the funding and actually, oh, okay, here's your offer. And then they can't sign the loan agreement or the funding agreement because they still have outdated SIPC information, where the partner you started the business with 10 years ago, who you had a fallout with, is no longer in the business, but they're still on the company registration documents. And then you're like, where are you going to find that person to come and co-sign the agreement or the new contract or the whatever? So actually, I think it's the pitfalls are not so much, do you have a product, can you sell, da, 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 da. For me, the really things that cripple businesses, full stop, is the boring stuff that they overlook. Okay, hands on the side.
Thank you. So on the conversation of backing yourself, right? So you're young, you're female, you're Black, you're all of that stuff. how do you balance showing up as the best, backing yourself up without rubbing egos of those that need to still give you work to do? So I am showing up as my best, but now you're threatening or upsetting the egos of certain people. How do you find that balance?
And this now links a little bit back to the earlier question about when do you leave, I think. Honestly, if the environment's never going to allow it, then, or you can see that that's not going to work, I also don't want to encourage you to stand there and go and like forever and a day force yourself where people actually just don't want you. So there's also a walking away point where you find the right opportunities and environments. But otherwise, it helps, even now, you know, we're in a more uncertain, less binary situation. It does help when you are quite a positive person. And then I think that people will listen to people that they connect with. And so I find that in that respect, being authentic is probably what counts the most.
I'd like you to please shed some light around the notion of equity and perhaps share some knowledge nuggets around maybe your experience around small businesses and when they approach that stage of having to give away equity and maybe some of the challenges that you've seen around that. Thank you.
Sure. So in the interest of time, I'm going to choose one thing to hone in on and rather speak about that. So at the point where you might be thinking that your business needs another equity partner who can bring some funding into your business, I think that's the example you're using. Possibly, I think the biggest balancing act is not bringing in those other equity shareholders too early, because there might be a stage where actually you're also quite comfortable to bring in other funding and other equity shareholders for purpose of taking some of the money you put in over the years out. So it works for you to realize some of your own sweat, tears, effort, and what you've built. But if you do it too early, where the valuation for your business is still not where it could be, you can then give the opportunity to whoever comes in to come in on the cheap. So there is quite a delicate balancing act about bringing in new shareholders or new equity funders. And actually, I would say one of the biggest considerations is where in the timeline of your journey, because if you're a pure startup, you're going to probably give away too much equity for cheap. If you can stand your own and evidence that you're profitable and that you're worth something, you can possibly demand a bit more. But otherwise, is bringing in other equity partners into your business a bad thing? Absolutely not. And especially if they can add more than just funding and other expertise, and they can be the thing that helps lift your business to the next level.
I did want to know, and I think it's sort of partially been asked, but how do you do the educational task of preventing your leaders from sort of cannibalizing their own success, in the sense that if you've had a leader that's been in the business for about 10 years, but now they're having difficulty letting go of some things and you're hired as an expert to do some things, not in an egotistical way, just the weaning off of the, yes, that's what I mean. I know it's going to lead into toxicity, but yeah.
And so are you asking the perception as the specialist who's been brought in?
Yes.
From actually asking that person to make space?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you ask them to make space. Because also, and I'll tell you why. Because I think there's also, by the way, obviously you saw there was tons of quotes on my thing, but I feel like that illustrates stuff best. There's one around, you only get you only get what you have the courage to ask for, something along those lines. And also people will hide behind the fact that, oh, you know, it's okay, like you're still learning, or you know what I mean, or you're still new. And you have to say to them, hi, I'm actually here to also do this job, or to actually take, or whatever. And this is the skills. I don't know if you're aware, but actually this is the skill set that I do bring, my experience set, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what I've been tasked to do here. And I would like you to help me to make space for me to do it. I guarantee you, if you say that to somebody, especially sneaky people who like hold on to the, you call them out, it's quite awkward for them to then not appear to at least be, and you haven't put a gun to anybody's head, you haven't threatened them, but you've said you need to make space for me. And how I think we can do that is the following, is that initially you're going to let me make this first rusk, and then you're going to make me make the second one. Then you increment, you know what I mean, or whatever it is, how you manage a transition. But it doesn't just happen organically, unfortunately. It does help to be quite direct.
Just remember that.
Just go.
No, it's a joke. Nobody
go,
got
go.
that is an on joke. But anyway,
I just wanted to ask, so I think for a number of people that have been in and out of business, funding becomes the biggest challenge. So what have you seen, especially FNB being one of those innovative banks that really has done a lot in terms of business and other banks are catching on? What have you seen has been the main challenges that we are still experiencing as Black businesses, especially those small, probably governance stuff, but also that you're not going to qualify for this loan because you didn't have this, because I think that becomes
Okay.
the biggest issue.
Sure. So, and it's not Black business specific, but just businesses in general. So that's how I'll answer it. And then thank you for that shout out. I don't often get a lot of accolades. People bash us about the fact that we should be doing more, which we try. But anyway, so the way I can answer you is the following, and it comes back a little bit to some of the discipline aspects. Because South Africa does not have a business credit bureau, when your business comes to ask for funding, a lot of the time, as a proxy for willingness and ability to actually run your finances and repay your debts on time, South African banks in particular will often look at your personal conduct from a credit bureau perspective. So that is often something that trips businesses up, is that the fact that you've had, you've been letting your Virgin Active or something else subscription bounce repeatedly shows up as a bad conduct in your personal capacity. And then you're like, but I didn't apply for funding in my personal capacity. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because you're the proxy for your business. And a lot of the time, small businesses is very linked to what the person's balance sheet actually is. And that's why that's important. So again, actually, it comes back to very small things that I think trip people up. It's things like knowing that and that's just an example in the personal sense. But even within your business, so let's say you've been really good about separating your personal and business finances, build at least a little bit of a track record, typically 3 to 6 months, just so that it's easy for you to say, here is the bank statement. I've been actually earning money for this long. I'm definitely good for it if you lend me money. But even within that business loan or company, make sure that you're avoiding arrears, stuff like that people take for granted. The fact that you late pay on stuff or you exceed the limit or and somebody has to chase you, those things speak to, are you good at keeping a clean sheet and repaying people's money? So I can't overplay that enough. Conduct matters, personal and business. There's a hand at the back.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Rocky here. So I just want your take, right? Since you deal with a lot of businesses, is it better for someone who's an entrepreneur to sort of join in on the model that already exists, or actually work on trying something out on their own? And just to put into perspective, you're saying that there's a lot of growth and hard work invested in that. So let's say I want to start my own bank. Do I go through that 5 years of trying to figure everything out, or do I work my way up at FNB to make FNB better?
So I think different horses for different people, honestly. I think it just depends on what your will is, because not everybody is also designed to go and be a startup entrepreneur. They're not. I talked about the paycheck being quite addictive. I also read once that the 3 most addictive things in the world are sugar, cocaine, and a monthly salary, because it's so hard once you're in it. So not everybody's cut out for it. For some people, climbing a corporate ladder is absolutely fine. For some people who have a different risk-taking mindset and a different energy or commitment to trying something completely new, that's absolutely great for them. It just depends on you. Oh, one more question. Do we have time? Oh, okay, fine. I don't want to admit questions and then you shout at me. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I have a question about fast tracking your career growth. So let's say, okay, essentially, how do you get buy-in in order to work on projects that would kind of help you leapfrog in corporate?
Okay, sure. So I spoke already about, it goes without saying, work hard and be good at your job. Then I think people will entrust big projects to people who they think they can rely on. So reliability is actually a very big thing, especially if you're also trying to show people that you're reliable. Show people that when they ask you something, you do it on time or ahead of time. I hope you understand what I mean. Like, because, so don't take for granted building a track record of people knowing that you're reliable. They will give you the task to do.
How about just taking on like projects and then kind of like working on a project and then delivering some, like, let's say like an MVP, and then now you want to say, okay, we want the bank to take this on a larger scale. Like, how do you kind of get buy-in?
So if you also know what your own agency or influence is, and if it is still too limited to go and make an investment decision to move past, let's say MVP 1 per your description, then there's nothing wrong with calling upon other people who you know have agency and making sure that your idea resonates with them, such that when they do sit around that table and make the decision, that you've got some buy-in and support already.
Yeah. I actually had two questions, but she's already asked it. But the last questions I have stemmed from, I'm also from the Eastern Cape in my third DLA. And especially with our province, I found that there's a fear of education. As we also look at South Africa as a whole, there's actually people are fearful of education. And education is really what we need as people to be able to realize our potential. Maybe also a challenge to everyone here who wants to maybe excel on their careers. What are you doing in your own personal capacity as a professional to then conscientize someone and contribute to education? How do we fight that fear of education that exists within our country?
Okay, so I think firstly, a lot of people will tell you, education isn't everything. I actually think it is, though. Because had I not actually done well and then got that degree and then gone into finance, it wouldn't have set the path for me, if you understand me. And I know some other people often say, oh, but I don't use anything that I learned in varsity. Oh, come on, but it counts for something. That's the point. So education is important, firstly. That's my take. Now, what can we all do? And you actually hit the nail on the spot. It is my 40th birthday tomorrow, and yet I'm here spending time with you guys. I'm here spending time with you guys because it's that important for me that as we are leaders, we must share. I'd rather be drinking bubbly already. Just to be clear. So it's those things. You go and you accept the invitation to come do this, knowing that actually you'd rather be doing other things. No, I wouldn't. You know what I mean, though. Don't take it the literal way that I meant it. Also, you pay for somebody else's education that is not within your direct guardianship. Do it. Do it. Money best spent. I pay for nephews, nieces. Some are here, some are somewhere else. And my benchmark is I have a good enough life, because there's a point where you have enough. And actually where you can now start using your extra financial resources to pour into other people's cups. The way I choose to do it is other people's education cups.
The last one for today.
Okay.
All right. I think this can be an interesting one. You know, as a young Black African, or South African to be precise, we're at a point where you will get an opportunity to manage at your workplace or in the corporate world. So, you know, their morals, their principles that you grew up with, don't look at an adult in the eyes, call them ma'am, sir, and all those things. And how do you stand your ground? How do you prove that you can read that adult and you can instruct them to do work, of course, respectfully so, without stepping on each other, on somebody else's foot? How can you ensure that there is that level of respect between you and them, even though they're like 3 times your age?
Sure. Being direct does not have to go without being respectful. And I think that's the combo. You can instruct somebody or ask. You can give honest feedback. You can say you need to pull your weight on this. You can da-da-da-da. And actually, I think the marker is the respect mark. So actually, you already had that answer, I think, in your own head, and you just need to back it. Okay, now we're really out of time. Out of time.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andiswa. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
guys. You had a great energy. You kept us going with all the questions and engagement.
If you could find her, try to steal her.
Privileged way, honestly, for me to be entering the 4th floor. So thank you. Thanks. Cheers.